Welcome back to the Dreaming and Doing podcast. I am here with Jake Sasseville today. He is the CEO and founder of the Imiloa Institute. He was the youngest host on late night TV on ABC, and he is an author. Welcome, Jake, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
So, Jake, given that this podcast is about dreaming and doing, I wanted to invite you, especially because I think of you as someone who is a dreamer, and I think you identify also as being a visionary. And you've created an entire retreat center. And so I'm wondering if you could talk with us just a little bit about um, where this vision came and maybe just a little bit about you as a dreamer and a visionary in general.
So, thanks for the question, Melissa. I think that where we, um, there's so many different areas that I can go in with this. So, I think we lose sight of our dreams often early on even in our professional lives. I think we go to college. I think that we learn certain things. We learn about the world around us and how it's supposed to be. And for me, I didn't really learn how it was supposed to be.
Hmm.
I yeah, I had an odd upbringing where I grew up in Maine, and my brother was diagnosed with cancer very early when I was 14, he was 11, and he ended up dying when I was 17 and he was 13.
Hmm.
And so for me, the rules to the game were really shaped differently because of that experience. So then all of a sudden I just realized I'm not going to follow any of the rules to the game because none of it really makes sense or matters because everything was just upended. And so what that
Hmm.
actually did for me is it started to cause me to really get curious about what the future could be. Because if I could watch this happen, if I could see my baby brother die in my parents' arms, it's like, if that's possible, then anything is possible. And so
Hmm.
that's just a belief system that I've run with my entire life, is that anything is possible and everything's always working out for me, and that I'm really lucky. For some reason,
Wow.
out of the most pain that I think any family can endure, I created and cultivated that belief system. Now, I know many people don't come out of an event like that with that kind of belief system. That just happened to be the one that I came out of it with. So, in terms of dream, yeah, so I've always been, I mean, in many ways, my grieving process early on in my life was constantly doing, was achieving. You mentioned in the bio that I was the youngest host in late night TV history. I was 21. I was a baby and I was running a team of 40 people of my own
Hmm.
show, and responsible for everything, the bills and the promo and the press and the writing but I had a team to support. And so, yeah, I've just kind of spent my life both dreaming and doing, but it's been cultivated out of this very unique belief system that if this is possible, if I'm able to witness the impossible as possible, then anything in life must be possible.
Wow. And I think it's so interesting that takeaway, how from that difficult situation, you came out with such a positive and optimistic um, belief system. And even that line, everything is always working out for me. I think in a lot of the reading that I've been doing this past year for myself, and just trying to expose myself to different ways of thinking, I find that to be a really interesting statement. But also, I think that there are many people who want to believe that everything is always working out for them, but really struggle. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit, either about what makes that so easy for you to believe, or how that has shown itself to be true in life, or how you navigate the times when you find that you need to rely on that reminder again.
Well, a belief is often unconscious and it's
Mhm.
cultivated through a series of thoughts and, in my experience, pairing those thoughts with action. And so I think that when people are looking, like people often talk about listening, well, I even talk about it, listening to life's whisper or looking for confirmations, of like what way to proceed. The thing that people don't say about confirmations that are actually really important is that you have to take action in order to get confirmation. We get clarity through engagement. And so if I'm not taking massive amounts of action in my life, I'm never going to get the confirmation that life is always working out for me. But I just happen to be very action oriented for the thrill of taking action, not for producing some sort of result. And in that thrill that I have of taking action, I'm able to get confirmations that life is indeed always working out for me. So belief system is not just something that I walk around thinking like, oh, everything's working. It's actually what I believe. And as you know, as a therapist, when someone believes something to be true, unless they are presented a really compelling reason to unbelieve that, they will continue acting in accordance with that belief, which is why I'm very present to when I have limiting belief systems and when I have good friends or professionals around me that say, hey, you might want to look at that belief system, because I know that that's running the show. And it's a whole deeper conversation than that, but I think it's important because I think a lot of people who maybe don't have that belief system are like, oh, maybe if I just think it, it'll be. No, this is cultivated, like joy in the midst of tragedy and grief, which has been really all about my life. Having that joy is cultivated. It's cultivated by taking action. And yeah, I see a lot of confirmations that joy is our birthright, but that's because it's a belief system that I have. But I'm continuously taking action, consistently receiving confirmation that is true. But it's based on the action that I'm taking, not the results that I'm creating in my life and not the thoughts that I'm thinking.
Jake, and all of these things that you're saying, they sound really nice and they sound really lovely, but I think in reality, these are all really significant and also really hard to practice. And like I'm thinking about, that sounds lovely. Like I got to take action. And I'm thinking about it can be really scary to take action. Even if you want to believe everything is working out for me, everything is good. Taking action is really scary for people. And I love almost your excitement for action when I think action is so scary for a lot of people.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what causes it. I mean, I haven't really thought about it. I'm not really a therapist or a coach. I'm just a college dropout who happens to have, started and failed at 20 plus businesses and has had his whole family die before the age of 37. Like that's just the reality for me. And so when
Mm-hmm.
people tell me that it's hard or that they're sad or depressed, it's like, I know sadness. I know depression, not more than anyone else, but I also know
Mm-hmm.
what's possible from those ashes. And
Mm-hmm.
it just takes someone who is able to really look within to just stop with all the external stuff, to look at their addictions, even if the addictions are based on their emotions, that they just want to feel something, and to actually do that self inquiry. And a lot of my life has been, has really focused me into exploring the deeper parts of us, the deeper parts of me, because I've had to, otherwise I wouldn't survive.
And this idea of I'm taking action because I want to take action, right? And because I believe things will work out. And I'm not getting overly caught up in the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And,
that's something that
oh, go ahead.
that's something that I learned in my 12-step program. I got into a 12-step program of recovery, and one of the things that I learned was that um, oftentimes the reasons why we cultivate addictions is because we feel like there's been a loss of choice, that we don't actually have the
Hmm.
choice, and we often feel like that we're doing things in order to create a result. And what my 12-step program invited me to consider was, what if I were no longer in the results-based business? What if I no longer took action to drive a certain result, but I took action for the thrill of taking action? And guess what happened? My whole fucking life changed. Sorry, I swore on your podcast, Melissa, but
You're
my whole
totally
life
fine.
changed. Because once I got that distinction, you know, and it's really hard to see it, but once I got that distinction that I no longer wanted to live in the results based business, everything I had done my entire life was to drive a result in a bank account or someone being proud of me or someone doing this or that. And guess what? It left me with a bunch of what I like to say, goddamn God sized holes inside of me, because I was constantly trying to fill it with the addiction du jour, when really it was because I was trying to drive so many results. And guess what driving results actually is? It's your self-will that's totally out of control. Where's God in that equation? Where's higher power? Where's source? Where's the universe? If it's not there, likely the spiral will just continue. By moving more toward cultivating a relationship with God, again, the God of my understanding, doesn't have to be your God or whatever, that has allowed me to move into the action taking business. Just taking action, turning the results over, seeing what happens. I look at what happens. I take a little more action. I watch what happens. I'm not clinging on to it has to look like a certain thing. Because who am I to say the life I'm living right now, I could never have dreamed this up 10 years ago, ever. If I was living for the results of what I was able to produce 10 years ago, I would have never created it. That's why I think 5-year plans are silly. Like, you don't even know what's possible for you in 5 years. And to think that you do and put a plan against it almost seems sacrilegious to me. It almost, honestly, honest to goodness, it seems sacrilegious to me. So that's just a little bit about action and results. I love this conversation. I could have this conversation all day.
Yes. Well, and I feel like that's been the lesson of one of the lessons of 2023 for me is, and I keep hearing it repeatedly. So I'm random, I'm talking with you and you happen to be talking about overinvestment in the outcome. And I'm like, oh, Melissa, here you go again. Like another opportunity for life to remind you about this thing that you've been learning. And so I just think that it's been a really big lesson for me to get out of the outcome and maybe a little bit more into curiosity, and just seeing how things go a little bit more. So I love that you shared that. So Jake, the other thing that I think about, right, when I meet with you in person, and I got to meet you in person in Costa Rica at Imiloa, it is absolutely beautiful. And you are someone who has a lot of presence, has a lot of energy, excitement, enthusiasm. And I have a lot of energy as well. I tend to be someone who's really optimistic. And in some of the business circles I've been in lately, I'll notice people and I'm like, wow, like they are also really enthusiastic. And I'm like, I think that they're more optimistic than I am, and you do that whole comparison thing. And I start to wonder, like, how are they so optimistic? How do they sustain that? How do they maintain that? So I'm wondering for you, Jake, how do you maintain optimism? How do you maintain your energy and your enthusiasm as someone who is, at Imiloa, but also continuing to work to see some other big things come true?
It's such a good question, and I don't want to give a BS answer. So that's why I'm taking a moment. It really depends. I know a lot of enthusiastic people. It's funny, I was on Maui recently, my old home on Maui. I used to live there. And I was at a really great cafe. And there was this really beautiful human being who would take my orders every day. And she was very generous with her energy, very kind of Maui, like very just euphoric almost when she would take my orders. And she would have kind of the same conversation. What are you doing? You going to the beach? You're going for a hike? She clearly just had her filler statements that she said, but it was very nice. It was really lovely, right? It was for those 10 seconds. It was beautiful. Perfect. She was showing up in the role that she had to show up. But it's interesting. I was there with my friends and I would go back often. It was a great little vegan shop. And I'm vegan plus, by the way, which means that I eat more than just vegan, but I call myself vegan plus, like LGBTQ plus, I'm vegan plus. So I just happened to be at a vegan shop that day. And I would look at this girl when she wasn't interacting with the customer. I would look at her when she didn't know she was being viewed or looked at, when she was cleaning a table or whatever. And her face was so sad.